question from there too. Can you go to page 281?
Question, Professor? The Kindle version of your book, is it, are you
Right.
familiar with the Kindle version or no?
I have the Kindle too. None of the pages line up, right?
Yeah, it's in terms of just a.
All right, so
Is there a section?
Yeah, what section is it?
it's right above 11.2.3.
Okay.
Right above 11.2.3. Okay, so basically, what's the difference between how government spending is financed? So here we go. Difference between funding of G and monetization G. How is all this different? And this is a really powerful thing. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like the way I've done this, and it needs to be updated too, which I did in my recent edition. So I'm doing it for you. So here we are. This is the treasury. Okay? And here is domestic and foreign institutions and investors. So come on, this is a nice review. You can actually just stay with me here. And so this is the chapter 3 part. This is the treasury, so US Treasury. This is the chapter 3 part. This is sells new government bonds. And to these people here, so this is the chapter 3. These are those auctions to government spending is funded by new government bonds. That's the big thing here. This is Treasury selling new. Very important. So, and getting loanable funds from domestic and foreign residents. So foreigners are flocking, all that stuff. Putting the okay. And so that's what we did in chapter 3. So this is how G is funded. So basically, this is G. So this is how government spending is financed. The treasury auctions of new bonds. These are the discounted government bonds. The new government bonds, these are discount bonds to domestic and foreign residents. That was how G was done. This is chapter 3 story. Then we have monetization. So basically here let's use the same notation. This is the Fed. So here's the story, folks. That the government can't get enough money by borrowing, so please look at me. They need that much money, right, to pay for the deficit. They can only borrow that much. The rest, they print money. All right, so they need that much. They can only borrow that much. The rest is monetized. And in our world, in COVID, monetized was that much. A whole lot was monetized. So that's this here. So basically, here the Fed buys new government bonds, basically prints money. And this is monetization. This is still of the budget deficit. So this is still new government bonds. So the Fed, the Treasury basically calls downstairs and says, hey, we couldn't borrow as much as we wanted. We needed that much for COVID. We could only borrow that much from domestic and foreign. We're going to send some treasuries downstairs. Could you please print money? Right? That was called monetization. This is again new government bonds. Now here we have private banks. And here now the Fed buys and sells existing government bonds. Loanable funds, and this is how money supply is checked. This is open market operations. This is M. Open market operations. So this is the main way that the Fed changes money supply. So this is how Fed changes short-term interest rates. And so this is existing government bonds. Okay, so basically, remember that story I told you? I'll let you copy. About how I'm the Fed and I want to lower the short-term interest rates. So I tell Bank of Nick, sell me some $1,000 government bonds, right? And I give him, and then I give you, and then I buy bonds from you and I give you, and now you have 1,000 more to lend. Remember that, Chris? And Chris, you walk down the street and they compete to lend you the money and the interest rates fall. And the opposite's going to happen next week or whenever. So that's existing government bonds. So that's how M is done. So far, so good? And then
And the key there is that the private banks don't have a choice, right?
they do not have a choice. So far, so good, folks? And then here we have quantitative easing, where the Feds basically buy, the Fed buys the oranges, rotten oranges. Remember that story? Rotten bags of oranges. Remember that from the subprime crisis? Remember all those oranges? The Fed's buying in the COVID crisis. The Fed was buying junk debt, anything to throw money at us, to throw money at banks. 120 billion a month, maybe 160 at one point. In COVID, it was at 48 billion, and we were going, oh my God, that's so much. I mean, sorry, in subprime, it was 48. In COVID, it was 120 a month. And it's still sloshing around out there. That's going to be tapered next month or next week. So that's the QE. Not just existing bonds, but I remember when it first started happening, and I mentioned this in class, Financial Times was wondering, what will the Fed buy next? Spoon collections? Comic book collections? Rock collections? Like in my case. So that's this. So existing and oranges here, new bonds here, new bonds here. And now this last thing here is private banks. So this is collateral, and this is capital investment, loans for capital investment. And so this is I. So this is the, we're borrowing from, so this, I did this at a reunion. I just made this up at a reunion, and people went crazy. They said, oh my gosh, suddenly it all falls into place, because otherwise it's like Dana and, was it this gentleman in the back? Jose, both of you were asking me this very profound question. When I asked you the next day, did you read Broken Rhombus? And you guys went, yeah. And I don't like it. I don't like the way I've done it. So I decided to do it. In the new edition, it's nicely done. Boop, boop, boop. Now one more new one. With COVID, we have there's a new one here. Here we are, this is not in the book. This is COVID. Article 13.3. So this is a brand new way. So basically, this is something, another channel came up in COVID where the Fed can directly give you an infusion. It can put an intravenous tube right in you directly. By buying anything like, Nick, it's like Nick's Bakery. Nick, you got anything to sell me? Nick says, yeah, I got some old ovens and some assets and some trays. Nick, sell it. How much do you need to help you through COVID? I kind of need 12 million. All right, Nick, send all your old trays to me, or just kind of act like you're giving them to me, and I'm going to give you 12 million. Article 12.3. It was from the George Bush time. We resurrected it. I think it was from 1980, where the Fed directly can choose companies and pump money to give you an infusion. Bedelia, you got a pharmaceutical company. Bedelia, how are you doing? I said, I need help for 15 million, okay? She goes, yeah. Okay, tell you what. You got some old oscilloscopes or whatever, spectrometers? He goes, yeah, I got a whole bunch in my storeroom. All right, you sold them to me for 12 million. Thank you. Done. Article 12.3.
So these are the bailouts, right?
These are the bailouts.
Yeah.
And so there you are. And the reason I call it a broken rhombus, there are two fracture points here. There is a problem here. And there is a problem here. And so I call it a broken rhombus. This is a rhombus. That baby is a rhombus. And there are two fracture points here. Hence broken rhombus. And what I found in the subprime crisis is we didn't think of all the things that could go wrong in our economy. Who owns the Fed? The Fed is not federal. You all know that. There's nothing really federal about the Fed. It's privately owned. Fed is like Federal Pizza, Federal Express. It's got a dotted line to the president, but it's owned privately. The Fed is a privately owned institution. You all know this, right? Well, it is. It's as private as Federal Pizza, Federal hot dogs. There is a dotted line. It's all coming in Chapter 11. So these guys, so there are 12 federal banks in our country. We are a country where we don't have one central bank in one place. There's a board of governors in Washington, but there are 12 feds. New York, Boston, Richmond, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and so on, Kansas City. So each bank is owned by the private banks in its region. You see the problem here? So when these guys were left holding bags of rotten oranges, you see where I'm going? They own the Fed. So we put this firewall here at one point between the G and the M. People, oh, big firewall. We got it down, separation. We forgot to put a firewall here. So the Fed just bailed out the people who own it. So oh my God, what is Bernanke doing? Bernanke is bailing out people who own him. Are you kidding me? And so that's a broken rhombus. There's a problem here. It's a moral hazard situation. So the Fed, that's all those 48 billion of oranges buying over and over, and the guy in my office laughing his head off saying, Professor, what a great country this is. I thought I was going to go. And I was bailed out. This is a great country. And I'm going, oh my God, what is this man saying? So there's a problem here. And the other problem was here. Sometimes you can borrow, you want to borrow from your private banks, they will not lend to you. Sometimes you want to lend to these people, they will not borrow. Liquidity trap. The liquidity trap will break down this relationship. So here, the fracture is a liquidity trap. break this down. And here, private banks own the Fed. We'll do more of this in chapter 11. It's a conflict of interest. This is the first time I'm actually doing this in class, because normally I would have you read it, but this is too important. So I hope this helps. But this is a deep click. You're not going to find this in any other book. Okay, questions, comments?
So the domestic investors, they buy treasury bonds and give money to the.
Yeah, this is the whole G minus T,
Yeah.
S minus I, plus imports minus export story, right?
Yeah, but my question is, like the treasury rate would be much lower compared to when private banks actually lend
Yeah.
it to them, the interest rate would be much higher.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what-
yeah,
so-
yeah. This is the treasury bill rate, the safest haven asset in the world. This is like borrowing from your local bank, but we're looking at the flow of funds. I'm just trying to separate how all these things are funded and how they're different. Yeah, sorry, Jose.
Professor, I know that the room is a bit loaded on information, but do you think it would be possible to highlight the primary and the secondary markets?
Wow, Jose, that's too much of a deep click. You know, I'll think about this. I think, you know, what happened was in the first and second edition of the book, I kept getting these questions in class. What is the difference between how G is funded and M? And I said, well, okay, G is new bonds, M is existing bonds, okay. But then QE, then what is monetization? Is that G or is that M? So all that was happening. I said, okay, let me just separate them out. So that's how this happened. And then this new thing happened with COVID. And then in the COVID thing, I realized there's a problem here. This doesn't automatically work. There's a liquidity trap. If confidence is low, banks don't lend. Or if confidence is low, borrowers will not borrow. So these arrows, you can draw these arrows till you're blue in the face. But this thing shuts down. There's a liquidity trap. Okay, anything else, folks? Okay, well, we're going to end a little early. Thank you for hanging in there. Elena, hang in there. We're going to see this through. See you guys next week, folks.